Seeing none? All in favor? That is Mr. Ferguson in favor, Mrs. Kyer in favor, Ms. Fulton, and Ms. Gregg in favor. Those opposed? Ms. Latham, Ms. Foudy, and Mr. Knapp. Motion passes. Thank you all very much. Moving on to the consider approval of the proposed 2011-12 school boundary changes for the following campuses. We'll take Kilo 9th grade center first, or do you want to take them together? Take them together. Thank you, sir. Okay, so I need a motion, please. Yes, to start.
Accept the administration's zoning plan.
Okay, motion, Mr. Ferguson. Second, Ms. Fulton. And now we're open for discussion. Mr. Ferguson?
My question to Dr. Waddell over the weekend was to verify that this is the same plan that reviewed on January 27th, I believe, and you verified it is. So we've already reviewed and discussed this plan and held a public forum on it, as I understand.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Knapp?
Yeah, just for the benefit of everyone here, why again are we not splitting it direct feeds from the middle schools?
Mr. Buck?
If we did a direct split with delay and Huffines going to Kilo North, when we got the two grade levels together using March 10th figures, when I went back and refigured it again, we'd have 1,193 students at Louisville High School North in a building that's designed for maximum capacity of 1,100, and we would have 928 students. If we kept Hedrick and Durham together, we would have 928 students at the South facility, which is designed for a maximum of 1,200 plus.
That answer your question, Mr. Knapp? Okay. Ms. Fulton, you had a question?
Yes, I'm wondering if in the middle school splits that we're talking about, Mr. Buck, do you have the numbers on the two middle schools that would be going different directions? Are you talking about an even split of a middle school, or is it a small portion of a middle school?
I don't have those numbers with me. No.
Okay. Because what I'm trying to figure out is here, we have room in both buildings next year because we're only going to have 9th graders in them. So if we do want to look at doing something different here, we have flexibility because we have some time. Neither building is going to be full next year. So we could consider looking at the boundaries differently, or looking at the, middle school boundaries differently so that they lined up with the 9-10s. Because I personally would love to see two middle schools feed into one of the 9-10s and two middle schools feed into the other 9-10. I don't know how feasible that is, and I know we didn't look at it in a backwards way, that way. So I'm wondering if we can, with the flexibility we have, with the time, if we could somehow improve upon that or decide that it's still in the best interest and continue on the current path.
I don't like seeing middle school split. Asked about it again today, but with the numbers being what they were, it just didn't make sense to already overload a building when you have capacity in another. But I don't see a reason why we couldn't do that. It may mean now that next year, based on what we see, that some kids who are at one campus, might be facing going to another, and then we'll have to address that. That can be done. The problems won't be huge, but I don't know why we couldn't be open to seeing if there's another way to do it. It gives us a little more time to think about it, and it certainly this year wouldn't overload the buildings.
I agree with that. I didn't like splitting the middle schools because that's a touchy time for those kids. And I remember when we had 1,100 in delay, the small delay. So I'm sure that we could have a few extra temporarily, and they might not all show up. So I would rather us try to work toward keeping the middle school, the 2 and 2 together.
Mr. Buck, do you have the totals for just ninth graders next year, what they would be at each, if we did that?
Yes, ma'am. At the North Campus, there would be 532 students if everybody moved up. The South Campus would be 446. I just want to make one comment from an historical basis. I've been through 39 years of zonings. I was principal at Milliken Middle School when half of that school went to LHS and half of that school went to Marcus High School, and we experienced no problems with that split campus when we were going to 2 separate high schools, okay? And we had virtually no problems dealing with that particular situation. I think that if you look, and I agree with Dr. Waddell, we can definitely look at that. There may be capacity issues when we start looking at the middle schools. And that's something that we just have to go back and look at and run the numbers. But we have certainly have precedent for splitting middle schools as far as attendance zones. That's not something that's new in the district. I think then next year you'd be facing 2 sets of zonings that would probably be somewhat controversial as well.
Yes, Ms. Fulton?
So, Dr. Waddell, my question to you would be, if we were to consider some flexibility here, would you prefer that we approve the boundaries as they are, only affecting ninth graders, or would you prefer that we amend the boundaries to handle the current middle school boundaries, 2 here and 2 there, while we're taking another look at it, which is the least disruptive?
Well, I think Mr. Buck makes a really good point that you need to think about. Obviously the least disruptive would be to keep the middle schools together. If you are going to have to consider next year, though, if the numbers don't add up, that you may be impacted. It'll be the kids that are already going there that may have to move, and you may be looking at other boundary changes. And I think in terms of what is meant by least disruptive, one boundary change is not as disruptive as several. And we don't know what it would look like. You've got to have balance in the 2 schools. And, what we would have by waiting a year would be to see if there's you really, I think, Mr. Buck, correct me if you think I'm not, this isn't quite right. But you're probably going to have to look at the middle schools, at those alignments to adjust them, and so you could be affecting 4 schools at that point. And so I just the problem with rezoning is it's like dominoes falling, and once they start falling, they just keep falling. And so the least disruptive is to approve what we have here, and we can look at the numbers later and see if there's a way that does not affect a lot of campuses next year. And if we can come up with that, we can report that to you. But I'd say that we have a way to balance the numbers now, and it'll work. And there's the possibility that we can give people an option to, like we're doing in the 9th grade, to finish their last year out if we don't change it, But I think the easiest thing to do is stick with the proposal that we have.
Ms. Gray?
Would there not be a possibility, if it was overcrowded, to allow open enrollment and let them go to Forest Wood where we have some room? Forest Wood? Although it's Flower Mound High School, I know, but that's okay. You open enroll and let the kids go wherever you've got room. How many?
From a practical standpoint, that would be difficult to work with.
The problem with open enrollment is you don't know who's going to take advantage of that, and so you really can't
Because
plan.
of the high schools.
And you can't plan, you don't know the numbers in advance, so.
Yeah, but still.
I would, okay, I'm sorry. You all done? I would suggest that we stick with the plan that we have now. But in the ensuing year, look, since what we're looking at now is Louisville's, look, it's the 9/10. I don't think we have any other elementaries or middle schools planned for right now. We could look at the whole zone to see where we can improve it, to make it so that we can have the kids stay together more, because I know, as Ms. Shovin said, that some kids from Lakeland don't stay together at middle school. I mean, they meet up later on in high school, but still, and then we would have a year to more or less look at that and get community input on how it can be done. So that's what I suggest to do, since this has already been set up and it's been planned and everybody's already been talked to about who's going where. And I just think that it would be better if we did it all at once instead of in pieces, personally.
There was a question earlier in a speaker asked about similarities in the campuses, and that's another thing about this proposal is it's pretty balanced as far as.
I have current information on that, given on March 10th as well. If we did the current proposal and the current 7th and 8th graders move up to 9th and 10th in 2 years, the North Campus would have 51% economically disadvantaged, and the South Campus would have 52.6% economically disadvantaged. The North Campus would have 17% ESL. The South Campus would have 16.2% ESL. I don't know how we could get it any closer than that.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, so we'll vote on the motion.
Just, Ms. Kyer, I just want to state to clarify that I am fully in favor of moving forward in an expedient manner, and I wasn't suggesting that we don't do anything for a year. Obviously, we got to know who's going to the building, how we're going to staff each building as it is, and so I suggest that we just use the ensuing year, as you stated, to evaluate and to determine what is the best overall plan, and if we want to change anything, then we could at that point, but approving these current boundaries in what we think would be the proposal is the least disruptive.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Knapp?
Okay, so clarify what the motion is.
It's A and B. It's
We're going with
it's
the current.
2 A and B. It's a current recommendation.
We're going with
Yes.
the current
Yes.
recommendation.
Yeah, we haven't had any other changes or amendments to the amendments to the amendments or anything.
No, but there were no
I'm
other
looking at it down the road.
Yes. Yeah. With direction
Next
to the
week,
yes,
what can
direction
we
to
do?
the administration to look and see, look at the whole zone and not just pieces of it, to see how we can make it so we don't have to change it in the next 15 to 20 years. Of course, that's not going to happen, but that's wishful thinking. But anyways, all right, so anybody else want to speak to the motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Mr. Ferguson, Ms. Foudy, Ms. Kyer, and Ms. Fulton in favor. Those opposed? Ms. Latham, Ms. Gregg, and Mr. Knapp. Thank you all very much. Now move on to consider adoption of resignation